Hey guys, it's Andrea here. Welcome back to VW Family Farm. I'm going to take you guys around today and show you who all I'm feeding and why. Who all animal-wise is here. What all do I do every single day to take care of them. Just kind of what we got going on our operation. I've spoken a few places over the years, and by far the most popular topic that I've ever spoken about is either raising pigs for meat or raising animals for meat in general, like how to get started in that, raising feeder pigs, things like that. So I'm going to give you a behind the scenes look at how our operation works. We raise our own boars and sows, bulls and cows, all the things to produce beef and pork ourselves. We're not sustainable yet on chickens, but we're working on it. I'll show you guys that as well. Our main thing is not just trying to do everything ourselves, but by doing that though, raising like the moms and dads of these animals and being able to produce them ourselves here on our farm, it does give us a little more security in knowing that we do have animals to process. Nothing's 100%. In fact, we had 3 pregnant cows struck by lightning a couple months ago. Things happen, so you're still not assured of it. But there's been times we needed to buy things, buy feeder pigs or whatever, and they just simply weren't available. Or what we wanted, what breed or whatever the case may be, wasn't available. So let's start right here. We have 4 old spot mamas in this pen. And then we have 7 feeders, which are big and need to be gotten out of there. We also have an old spot boar. I don't know if I said that. 4 mamas and a boar. Just life. I'm just gonna show y'all really how it is. They should have already been gotten out of there and weaned, but they're not. So they will naturally wean them eventually, but we like to wean them before that. So got to get those out of there. But if you've been around here a bit, you know we're building a market, and just frankly, there's only so many hours in the day, and it's just Ben and I for the most part, and so we're just surviving at this point. Over here we've got 2 more mama sows. These are Berkshires and another old spot boar. By far our favorite breed to raise. We've experimented with a lot of breeds, and this Berkshire / old spot cross, love them. Gonna show you some of their offspring here in a minute that are probably about a month away from processing. Really looking good. So I'll take you back to the rest of the pigs here in a minute. We're gonna kind of jump around because I don't feed in order. Spider web. I don't like go feed all the cows and then all the pigs. I kind of jump around based on where they're at on the farm. So, okay, next set while we're out here, only feed and water and gather eggs from these every other day. They have plenty of feed and water. Don't stress. But these are the American breasts. This is our step towards sustainability as far as the chickens go. I have 10 hens and a few roosters. Looks like about 3 roosters. That's too many. But again, not trying to present y'all a perfect picture. Got to do something there. We don't need 3 roosters with 10 hens. But those girls, that is such a good sustainable breed. And I had someone else comment about, could I please speak about why I'm saying Cornish cross are not sustainable? They're not sustainable because you can't produce that cross at home. It's a 4-way terminal cross, meaning every single one of their offspring, they're not going to live long enough for it to be sustainable for you. It's a 2-way cross and a 2-way cross that they've crossed. There's way more to it than that, but safe to say there's not Cornish cross farms on every corner where you can go that they're hatching their own. I don't know how else to describe it because I'm not a scientist, but we have to continue to buy those from a hatchery is basically what it boils down to. And so as long as those are available, I guess you could call that sustainable. But as far as like them being available because you're hatching them on your farm, not gonna happen. Now these American breasts, we've already hatched a slew of them, and I'm about to take you to those right now. We have a brooder full of them. Gonna see how that works out this summer. We're raising them. They're gonna take longer to raise. Cornish cross are definitely efficient. They have their downfalls, yes. They're not a healthy, hardy bird by any means, but Also, I do think, and I'm just trying to play what they call devil's advocate, but I do think the farmer has some responsibility in calling them not hardy because we've done this as well. So I'm pointing the finger at me as well. We try to raise them maybe too early on our farms to get as many batches in as we can. So we start too early in the spring, and we're either still dealing with cold temperatures, which they don't do well with, or what has happened to us, and I saw posts about this just in the last few weeks with all the crazy weather everyone's having. If you raise them and you put them outside and you don't have adequate shelter and you have a huge rainstorm and they get soaking wet, they will die on you. So they're not easy to raise in the early spring when it is still coming those hard, heavy downpour flooding rains, especially when it's cold rain. And I just have to say, I think part of that is on the farmer. Now, am I a huge Cornish cross fan? No, I'm not. We've lost a bunch in the past. But do I think they produce amazing meat? Yeah, they do. A lot of people will say they don't agree with that. Personal preference. Now, I do think the American breast has a richer, darker meat, but for some of our meat customers, they're looking for that Cornish cross meat, those large chicken breasts that are white meat, that are not dark meat. So it just depends on if it's your family, it's your customers who you're raising it for. There's a whole lot of factors to just say, this breed is not good and this one is. That's just way too general of a statement for me. Okay, so I'm gonna show you this batch of American breasts. There's also some layer little pullets in here as well. This is our brooder we made out of an 18-wheeler trailer. Works fantastic. I'm just gonna show you, honestly, it's a mess right now. These need to be out in our schooner, which I'll show you in a minute, but we've had some major storms, as I know a lot of people have. Our schooner took some damage, so we gotta find some time to repair it and then get these outside, because I do have a batch of Cornish cross coming in, I think, about 10 days. The Cornish cross don't need to go in the schooner, but these do, so the Cornish cross can go in this brooder for a few weeks. Anyway, we've got about 10 days to repair that. So these are in here way longer than they should have been. They're crazy. They're big, so they can fall all over the place. We had them only in part of this because there's just not a ton of them. But yeah, a lot of these are American breast chicks, and they're growing really well. There's a young batch in here as well. I don't know if you can see them, but anyway, it's a mess in there. They're overdue for going outside. Hopefully that's gonna happen really soon. We're also building a market, as I mentioned earlier. That is kind of the priority because we're open on Friday afternoons and Saturdays. So any kind of like construction or anything we do in the early part of the week, we have to have that wrapped up by the end of the week. So hopefully maybe Saturday afternoon we're gonna get that schooner repaired after the market closes for the weekend. It's just always something, but it's the busy time of year for a farm. It's just to be expected. Okay, I gotta get my big layers fed out here. You can see them over here waiting on their food. Gotta get them fed, and then I'm gonna take you around and show you the different pens of cows and pigs and give you some tips and tricks on that, and just my thoughts on if you don't have a lot of acreage, what you should do if you're trying to raise meat. So these are our Berkshire Old Spot crosses. Like I mentioned, they're not far from being ready to be processed. They are really good size, really good looking. The reason we like this cross is because you can see they still have a bit of a longer body. Old Spots have a very long body, which translates to more belly, more bacon, things like that. But they don't have as much in the back end as far as in the hams, and their shoulders aren't as big and things like that, like the Berkshires. So this is such a good cross because it brings both of those things together, and it has just made an amazing animal for us. So there's 14 back here. This is a very large pig pen. I don't know exactly how big. I'm not sure. It's way bigger than what they need, but it gives them lots of room to roam. We overstressed it at one time and there was no grass in it at all, and just didn't like that. And in fact, we're out here in our cattle pasture as well. This is mainly where we graze our cows. Last year, this is where we cut hay, but we're going back to grazing it this year and cutting hay on our other pastures. I could explain that more later. Grazing just deposits things on your land that is good for it in the form of, you know, manure and things like that. So we're swapping these things around. Rather than just continuing to do the same thing over and over and over in the same place. It's just like your vegetable garden or anything like that. Switching things up is a good thing. It gives the land different nutrients by putting the cows on it versus, you know, putting any kind of fertilizers or anything on it. It's just good to change it up from time to time. But one thing I want to mention and I want to stress, I want to take you back through our fields and show them to you and give you a little context, and then I'm going to tell you something very, very important. Here comes the cows. We're going to give them a look and count them. They are actually, you can see the pasture they're on. I was showing you pasture that they haven't been on yet. You can see how beautiful and amazing it is. There's some thistles out here, but other than that, this looks pretty good. It's not just stripped down. There's been times where there was barely any grass and we could see dirt. And that was on land that they hadn't even been to yet, not to mention land that they'd already been on. Now I can't see the dirt even on land that they've been on. So that's a great thing, and I want to explain to you what we've done to help that occur. One thing I want you guys to notice with the cows is their body score, their body condition score is what they call it. It's based on several things, and ours are not perfect by any means. But I want you to notice, like, you can't see all their rib bones and their hip bones and things like that. And there's been times in the past, I'm not gonna lie to you, that they had a lot of bones showing. And we just were learning. We didn't necessarily know exactly what we were doing, but they look better than they ever have for us. They're following me just simply because they're spoiled. They can go from here all the way up to the corral. There's lots of grass left out here. But one thing we have learned, and I'm gonna take you around, I've got 3 more pens of calves to go check, and they all look fantastic. For the first time, probably ever, every group of cows we have, we're super pleased with how they look. That comes from a couple things. One is getting your land in better condition. And that's one thing we certainly have done. That's why I was showing you the fields. You can see right there where those are about to go. There's been times we're about to move animals into a pen that didn't seem to have much more grass than the one they were coming out of. Now this group right here is about to get a little bit of grain. We do not grain finish our cows. They stay out on pasture their entire life. They do get some grain from time to time. This group right here needs a little boost, so that's what we're giving them, as a boost of protein. And we just try to be very transparent about that. If you're selling meat and people have a hard and fast rule, not a drop of grain, you have to be willing to let them go. They're not your people, and you have to do what's best for your herd, not what's best for a couple people, because you can't let people determine your management practices. You have to determine those as the farmer, and then let the people that agree with you on those find you. One thing I want to encourage you guys on is, if you've done the calculations on how many pounds per acre, because you can look up all those things online, or you know how many head of cattle per acre you should be able to grow out, and you've tried that, or maybe you went a little below that because you didn't want to push the max, and your cattle look like they're not getting enough to eat or they're suffering. I want to encourage you, be flexible. That's the #1 thing with raising animals for meat, or just raising animals in general, is you have to feed them. Just like with the pigs in the woods, we had too many on too small of a pen, and the land suffered. There was nothing out there but dirt and mud for a while. We probably have less cows right now than we've had in a long time. And the fact is, the grass may get ahead of us. You have to either, you have to find that perfect balance with rotational grazing, or with any kind of grazing, that you can't get ahead of the grass, meaning you can't get too many animals that you don't have enough grass for them. But you can't let the grass get ahead of you either, because really tall, seeded out grass is not really a great thing either. It's, in my opinion, a better problem to have than no grass at all, but it's still a problem nonetheless. It's not as nutritious, and they don't eat it as well. So you may be like us and find yourself with too many animals on not necessarily too small of an acreage, but on an acreage that doesn't have sufficient forage growth for those animals. So what I would encourage you to do is, until you know that, go less instead of more on animals. If you're trying to raise meat like we are, don't do like us and just stock your land full and then have to try to figure out how are we going to feed these. Or when it's prime grass season, when they should be eating lush forages, you're having to feed hay because you simply overstocked your land. And so now there's not fresh grass for them to eat. I would encourage you, you can see our grass growth back there. That's after several years of painstakingly hard work, of realizing that we had messed up and overstocked it and having to sell down some or process down some. And then figuring out how to get grass growing. I would encourage you, maybe take some of the money instead of buying animals and buy grass seed and establish some forages that will come back year after year. Get some things growing, native grasses in your area. It may be that you have to fertilize some. I know commercial fertilizers are spoken of in evil terms, but until you get your land to where you're rotationally grazing and healing it that way, your land might need a little bit of help because of all the stripping that we have done of the land. It's just where we are. Sometimes you can't draw a hard and fast line when something has been done for years and years and years. You may have to wean off of something like commercial fertilizers rather than just quitting altogether. And then also, you might need to, if you don't have sufficient land to raise, boars and sows and bulls and cows and the things to raise the parents of your animals you're wanting to process. Or maybe you're just raising cows for the sale barn, whatever the case may be. If you don't have the land to raise them, you just have to admit, I don't have the land to raise them. And maybe you need to buy feeders for a while and utilize your land for feeder cows or for feeder pigs, and buy them from someone else who's already got the established, forages and things to raise larger numbers while you're building up. Instead of just trying to force it and do it all yourself and strip your land, take it slow. Raise a few feeders, nurture your land along the way, and eventually you'll get to a point where you can raise those maximum pounds per acre in animals, but you can't just do that overnight, if that makes sense. I've got 2 more pens of calves to check. You can see the big herd of cows. Those are our mama cows. At the very beginning of the video, I showed you that was my 2 milk cows. The bulls are in there right now because we don't want them in with the cows. So we have those 2 sets, and then that pen that I showed you I fed a little bit to, that is 10, and those are steers and heifers. I've got 2 more pens of steers and heifers. Those are all separated based on age. You don't necessarily have to do that. We just did that because for record keeping, those are 3 different pens that were growing up. So if we were not raising, cows and bulls and trying to produce our own feeder animals, we wouldn't have the group of cows. We would probably just have all these groups of feeders. And we wouldn't have those big groups of mama pigs in the board. We would just have probably the ones in the woods. So it would look completely different. It would be a lot less pens of animals, a lot less separating, when you start raising, you know, your own feeders, you have to think about, I've got to get them far enough away from their moms to wean them successfully, or I've got to have a powerful enough hot wire, whatever the case may be. So there is more that goes into it. It is definitely profitable. There is definitely advantages, but you have to consider all the pros and cons of both. So let's go. Let's go check the last two groups, and let me show you how they're looking over there. Okay, this is the last thing I want to show you. These are groups of feeder animals that we're raising. This group is from 2022, so they're already getting close to 2 years old. It means they were born sometime in the year 2022. These have higher numbers, like they're 2243, 2241. That means they were our 41st and 43rd calf that year, so that tells me they were born later in the year. So they're not 2 yet, but this group was 22s, and then the next group I'm going to go check is 23s. So they're a year apart, and they're virtually the same size. This is about the time our switch took place. We started lowering our numbers of cows simply because we had to sell some. We had a huge drought. That's what catapulted all of this. And we had to thin our numbers down to be able to feed them. And as the grass came back, we weathered the storm. We didn't have the money, frankly, to go build our herd back up. And what that resulted in was a huge blessing, because it showed us the value of not overstocking our land. So I'm going to show you what these look like and what the next batch looks like. Now they still look good. I'm still pleased with them. If you rewind that clip and look, you're not seeing hip bones, you're not seeing ribs. They're filled out, they're good looking. But it's just amazing how little difference there is in them and the ones that are an entire year younger than them. Another side note, these are behind a locked gate that I did not bring the key to. So this is another thing. We have culled our herd down to only tame animals, pigs and cows. So all I did was make a couple cow calls, and here they come. That is so nice, y'all. I don't care how good of a calf they produce. Crazy ones will make your life miserable. But here these come. These are born in 23, a whole year younger than the others. So that is a very condensed version of what we have going on and why, and what I would recommend to you guys if you're trying to raise your own meat for other people, whatever the case may be. I hope you've learned something. That was just some tips and tricks that we've learned the hard way over time. And like I mentioned, it's definitely profitable to raise your own feeders. That's why we do it. That's why a lot of people do it. But if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. If you're not set up for it, or maybe you're just not there yet, it's still profitable to buy your feeders and raise them that way. You can still be successful. It's not less than or anything like that. You just have to figure out, where am I at and what are my goals, and go from there. And everyone's different. All right, I'm heading home. I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks for going around the farm with me. Things are great here, beautiful here. I'm gonna try to keep up filming for you guys, but Lane is getting married in 2 weeks. So things are gonna get crazy in a good way. I'll see you on the next one though. Thanks for watching, and God bless. And one last thing, I've had people inquire about like Lane and Emily and their weddings and stuff. If you did want to send them something, please by no means feel obligated, but people have, you know, mentioned their weddings and such and all that. You can send that to us and we will be sure to get it to them. Even if it's just a card of well wishes, that would be great. Or your prayers, even better. And our address is down below in the description. See you guys later. God bless.